From the Clark Ford Studio in Oxford, Mississippi, MBW Digital proudly presents the Oxford Exxon Podcast.
I'd say thanks for tuning in, but why am I going to give you a round of applause for something that you're supposed to do, to be frank?
And now, here are your hosts, Chase Parham.
And broadcast school has really paid off.
And Neal McCready.
I deserve to be on TV.
Welcome to this edition of the Oxford Exxon Podcast. I am Chase Parham in the Clark Ford Studio. You're getting, as you've been getting throughout the football season, a recording of the Thursday night live show from Funky's on the Oxford Square, the final show from Funky's for this fall semester, if you will. And tonight the guest is Matt Wyatt. Matt joined us for about an hour. We talked a lot of Ole Miss, a lot of Mississippi State, went back through some Egg Bowl memories and much, much more with Matt. So appreciate him. Appreciate all of you during this fall of live shows. You've been getting them on Friday morning every single time for those that are not in attendance on Thursday night at Funky's. And always thanks to Funky's for hosting us. Thanks to Blue Delta Jeans. Wouldn't be possible without those guys giving the trivia questions away and being great partners with us all the time there with their studio in Oxford on the Square and all over the place. They're traveling the country to put you in a great pair of jeans. The podcast brought to you, as always, by the Oxford Exxon. Remember, they're going to smoke your turkey for Thanksgiving, $15 to provide the turkey, and then they smoke it. It takes about 6 hours. The cutoff is the day before Thanksgiving, but they'll take care of you, take that hassle out of things for you. And then also, when I'm coming to you from the Clark Ford Studio, 662-257-1900 in Amory, Mississippi, Highway 25 South. Corey and those guys get you a quote within 15 minutes in business hours. And when you're done with the deal, you're right there to the bottom line to sign. Tell them about heard about the podcast. They'll take $500 off for you at Clark Ford. So without further ado, we'll get to the final live show at Funky's this fall. Matt Wyatt joining myself and Neal McCready on this edition of the Oxford Exxon Podcast.
Welcome into our final night of Funky's here for the semester. Matt Wyatt, join us over here, radio extraordinaire. You're doing some video, doing a lot of different things these days. So we're going to talk a little SEC football. We'll talk some Mississippi State in advance to the Egg Bowl next week. Talk a lot of stuff with Matt. This show, as always, includes the trivia question from Blue Delta Jeans. I'll get to that here in a little while. We'll give away a $200 gift certificate to Blue Delta Jeans tonight to anyone in the house. If they don't get it, it'll go into the recorded version of this podcast in the morning when this is available on all the places you listen to MPW Digital. So, Matt, hello. Appreciate you joining us today. And I hear you've already been over to Blue Delta today.
I have.
So
I have now been baptized. And I'm wearing them, and I'm glad to know that I'm not weird that I wanted to wear them out of there. So went in, try them on, put them on, and my first thought was, Dad, gum, they fit like pajamas, you know? And so I asked the guy, Dylan, there, I said, hey, can I wear these out? And he said, sure, yeah, feel free, wear them out of there. So, yeah, it's been a cool experience. They fit just right, like a glove.
I was just telling you, you will be wanting your second pair within the next, 48 hours. You'll start thinking about your second pair. You won't. I've told the story. I was in Birmingham. I was covering the SEC baseball tournament because Chase was frolicking at the beach.
it's not what happened, but okay.
And I had Blue Deltas on, and I wasn't. I guess I'd just gotten them, and I had a pair of my old jeans in the bag, and I got up the morning of the second game and threw those on, and literally had all these thoughts go through my head, like, what's happened? Did I gain weight? Have I lost weight? What have I done? Because they didn't feel right. And I finally realized, you've gotten used to the other ones. So you prepare yourself.
Okay. Well, and like I was telling you, there's a friend of mine named Andy Chapman. Andy and Mariana, they have a company called Eat Y'all. They work with restaurants and kind of farm-to-table connection. And they hooked me up with Blue Delta. They're like, you got to go, because I was always a guy, like, I don't shop for clothes. I don't really think about it. I don't want to think about it, that kind of thing. So they hooked me up. They're like, you got to go. So that's how this all happened. That was the start of it. So I'm talking to Andy at one point, and he says, man, they're the best thing ever. And he points to the ones he's wearing. He says, I got these a couple months ago, have not washed them. And I'm like, wait, hold on, time out. You hadn't washed the jeans, and you've had them for 2 months. And then he explains to me, No, you don't have to. Well, I didn't get to the bottom of it, but y'all got to the bottom of it earlier, that you put them in the freezer.
Yeah, you just get a big Ziploc bag. You know what I'm talking about, the big Ziplocs? And you just put them in there, and you throw a dryer sheet in there and put them in the freezer overnight, and you're all good.
Yeah. I'm going to try it tonight.
Well, you don't need to try it yet. You got to sole them up first.
I mean, you can wear them.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever you feel like it. That's your own deal. But
right, sure. Well, I'm going to try it. Going to
get into plenty of football. How's the show going? I would assume that you changed directions a little bit. Probably a little nervousness. Probably a little wondering what's up. Yeah. So how's it been the last few months?
It's been good. I would tell you that I've worked a lot harder than I was working before. And y'all can probably associate. You can make that change. But for me to go from being an employee somewhere where the check's coming in regularly, kind of whether you do a good job or not, frankly, to you get into that entrepreneurial self-employment world where there's no option to fail, okay? And if you do fail, the checks aren't in the mailbox sort of thing. So, there's a greater sense of urgency, and but it's been good, a little bit risky. But at the same time, this. It's part of the reason you're sitting here. In 2018, even now, but certainly 10 years from now, what I think is there's going to be very few radio companies out there. There's going to be very few TV companies out there. And what it's going to be is media, okay? Content. It's all going to be the same thing. And you're starting to see it, obviously, right, with the big, TV companies like a CNN and a Fox and an NBC and everything, how invested they are into audio on demand, video on demand. It must be available everywhere people are, which is on these little bitty screens, not necessarily on those big ones, right?
Oh, for sure.
And so what I saw over the last couple of years is even on, maybe a smaller level, whether it's regionally or even locally, if you're in this type of business, you better position yourself to, in 5 years, you better wake up and go, I am fluent in video, I am fluent in audio, I'm fluent in content management, and anywhere I got to post this, and I know everything about social media, and I'm a content producer 7 days a week. If we're going to be in that business, I'm thinking that's where we got to be. I can't sit here and go, a few hours of radio every day, and here I am with this great big, tugboat vehicle that's just slow and just sits out but I can't go up in any of the creeks and any of the sloughs because we're not mobile enough, right? And I'm thinking I got to get in a position. If I'm going to do this long term, I got to be ready to do it long term the way it's going to require. And so made the change, and so far it's going well.
Yeah, I mean, I did radio for 6 years in Mobile. I still do some radio here and there in Memphis, and I love radio.
Yeah,
there's a high to radio that is hard to explain to people that haven't done radio. But that format, as in a traditional manner, is so flawed.
Yeah,
because you're limited to. Your kids are young. How old's your oldest?
I have one. She's 7.
Okay, so you have a 7-year-old. Chase has a 2-year-old.
Okay.
I have a 17 and a 15 that are soon to be 18 and 16. Yeah. Man, they don't watch TV.
They don't watch it.
That's not a part of their life.
There's no such thing.
And they don't listen to the, quote, radio unless they're in the car with mom and dad because we have Sirius XM and I'm goobing out on 80s on 8. But that's not what they do. They listen to stuff on demand. They know what they want to listen to. And so it's right there at their fingertips. And they know, like my soon-to-be 16-year-old, Caroline, she's into all the Kardashian stuff.
Okay.
And so, after you get through making fun of that, you take a step back and you look at it.
Yeah.
So when she wants to watch whatever Kardashian thing, it's right there. It's on her computer. Hit the button. Mm-hmm. And when she's through, it picks up the next time right where she left off.
Yeah.
Well, if you've had that experience, you're not going back to what we had growing up, right? Where you watched a show on Tuesday nights at 7.
Right. There's no such thing as
that's over. And so when people can't figure that out, and frankly, a lot of people older than us can't figure that out,
right.
And they become dinosaurs.
That's right. It's Neil. What it is if they still think the same way, whether it's TV or radio, if they still think the same way they did in 98, 99, even 2000, what they are is a vehicle going down the road at 75 miles an hour, but they can't see that brick wall.
Yeah, and there's no brake.
Hey, and they're going to hit it.
Yeah.
They haven't hit it yet, but they're going to.
It's fascinating. It's one of the things we've done with podcasts and stuff. And as our numbers have grown and we sort of study it, it's because we've become part of people's lives and we're part of their routine.
Right.
And so we love to think, the reason we've done well is because our podcast is good. And maybe it is part of it, but what it really is it's been consistent.
Sure. But I would tell you another reason why it is a part of the routine. This is me bragging on y'all. I listen. The podcasts and the shows and the on-demand content that people gravitate to is where the people are genuine on this end of the mic. Okay? And that's one big disadvantage I think that TV has. Like a lot of people have they don't like a lot of the content on the SEC network and ESPN, these different channels. You know why? It's because so much of it is pre-approved and sort of scripted out ahead of time, and there's no room to really kind of know who they are. Whereas, you guys do a podcast. I listen to you for a week. You kind of feel like I know you because you're comfortable. You're not necessarily putting on a show. You're just kind of being genuine into the microphone. And that's really the challenge in the whole thing.
Yeah, people think they know our kids and everything, and they follow.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's good. It's great.
Strangers come up and ask you, hey, what'd she make on the math test, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're at least 4% female. I mean, we're really varied here. It's
I'm so
good.
tired of that number. That number is not accurate. The number is higher than 4%.
Yeah, Neil thinks we're higher than 4%.
I like to think we're 70%, but it's probably not.
He didn't go to either one of his proms, so he likes bigger female numbers as we go.
There's still some latent issues there,
We're
that I'm
still
trying to work
at this
out.
point projecting at this.
I have a feeling Matt went to his prom.
I did.
Yeah.
With the girl?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't remember a whole lot about the whole experience. I do remember.
You were drunk before it started?
Hey, no comment. Major snafu was homecoming my senior year.
Yeah.
Had a steady girlfriend throughout high school. So homecoming my senior year, we're hosting Central Tuscaloosa for homecoming. Number 1 team in the state. Dennis Riddle. You guys remember Dennis Riddle?
I do remember Dennis Riddle.
Running back at Alabama. He was Central Tuscaloosa's running back. We're hosting them. It's a huge deal. And I was one of those kids that, you're into girls, but football's it. I mean, so the whole week, we're getting ready to play number 1 Central Tuscaloosa. I know that the coaches that are recruiting me are going to be there. They're going to be watching him. All I could think about all week was football. I mean, we're going to home. Okay, you take care of homecoming, all that stuff. So the game's over. They beat us by 1 point with a late field goal. I'm just, dead to the world because we've lost the game. Then I realize I got to go to homecoming. So I get in a car with my buddy. We go to my girlfriend's house where we're going to meet him. We're all there getting ready. And I noticed the other guys are putting the corsage on their dates' dresses. And then it hits me, I don't have one of those. It never occurred to me to even think about it.
It was very selfish on your part, Matt.
Throughout the week. And my girlfriend, her name was Laurie, a really sweet girl. She wound up going to Auburn. She looks at me, and there's this moment of, here we are in front of everybody, and she realizes that I haven't even thought about it throughout the week. I don't have a corsage. It was a huge mess. I almost never recovered in that relationship because of that. Her dad had to run to some nearby grocery store to see if they had something in the freezer. They keep them cooled that we could use for a corsage.
See, had I gone to the prom, I would have remembered that.
Think so?
I would have, absolutely.
Well, you removed the possibility.
Instead, I went to an NBA basketball game. But it's okay.
As we take a break in this podcast, tell you that if a well-rounded slew of excitement is what you're after, Oxford is your type. They offer a little bit of everything, from a legendary sports program to a beautiful university, unparalleled shopping, and renowned arts, food, culture, and music scene. If you're planning a trip, the options for what to do, where to stay, and spots to dine are endless. Though they're smaller in terms of geography, the city is vibrant and full of walkable, ideal attractions to make the getaway the delight for travelers of all interests. To find out more of what's going on in Oxford, visit oxfordms.com/events to see the full calendar and see all you can do in Oxford this season, especially with the holidays going up. Podcast also brought to you by Community Mortgage, located in Oxford, Memphis, Stowe County, and Chattanooga. 33 years old this year. One of the oldest mortgage companies in the Southeast, a leader in condo financing and the float down option. So you can find Jason at 662-234-2799. 04 or JLOWE, that's JLOWE at communitymtg.com. With Christmas right around the corner, Master Cuts wants to keep your home looking up to par this holiday season. They want to transform your house into a festive staple of the neighborhood, everything from lighting and garland to inflatable characters. Whatever your vision may be, Master Cuts will work with you to design a custom display unique to your home. And the best part, all decorations you pay for, you'll own them. Master Cuts will keep and store your decorations until they're ready to go up next year, or give them to you to keep. The option is yours. So get a free quote today with Master Cuts, 662-607-7773. And then finally, time to get that flu shot. Don't put it off anymore. G&M Pharmacy on South Lamar in Oxford can take care of that for you. If you have major medical or major insurance providers, it is free, if not $25 there at G&M. Walk-ins are welcome. Every time they're open, you can go in and take care of that flu shot. If you want to use them for all your pharmaceutical needs, they deliver local in the Oxford area. So that's G&M Pharmacy on South Lamar. Now back to the show.
We'll get into a lot of subject matter today. I'm curious about something, though. Ole Miss starting its search for a chancellor right now. Jeffrey Vitter, the last couple months of his tenure. Larry Sparks named the interim today. Mark Keenum's done a really good job at Mississippi State over the course of the past years, actually almost a decade now, I guess, or so, a decade or so. PR-wise, and Neal talks about it all the time, states kind of figured out what they are, and they've sort of followed that a long ways. What have kind of been your impressions? What was sort of the issues there, and then what has Keenum done so well that's maybe made Ole Miss have to react to that a little bit?
You know, from my perspective, again, I'm someone who I don't really have a very good understanding or grasp at all of academia, how all that works. If I had to take a test on what the president of the university does every day, I wouldn't be able to answer those questions. But I will tell you, from my perspective, the state's so lucky, okay, to have this guy who is a grad, who is from Alcorn County, okay, you know, born and raised in the state, went to Northeast Community College, played football there, was an offensive lineman for, frankly, plug here, but one of the best guys and greatest coaches in JUCO history, a guy named Bill Ward. He played for Coach Ward. So, all right, then he gets into the ag world and works his way up in the United States government. At one point he's in Washington, you know, before becoming the president of your school. So, local, went to your school, played ball, and understands it is the best and biggest marketing tool any school has, whether it's a JUCO or a Division I program. Totally understands it's the window to your school, to the entire world, okay? And now he's your president. On top of the fact that he is a wonderful guy with his feet squarely on the ground, okay? I'm telling you, Mark is the kind of guy that he walks in, he sits down with you two on this podcast. He's totally comfortable here at Funky. He's just chatting it up, talking sports or whatever it is you want to talk about. And he's a people person. And on top of all that, too, just a really strong leader. He goes there, he's there for the long term, and he knew it, and everybody knew it, you know, knows what direction he wants to go. Then I think, again, with a limited understanding, I think he developed this plan early on and said, you know what, here's who we are. We're not going to Austin, Texas, and recruiting kids to come to school here. If it happens, if there's that opportunity, if somebody fills out a form online, sure, we'll do our job and contact them. But what we're going to do is we want every kid from Alcorn County to come to Mississippi State. We want every kid from the Delta to come to Mississippi State. We want all of them from the coast. And we're going to approach it that way. And so they went to work. They totally revamped and just overhauled their recruitment arm of the university. And what you hear now, and you hear it in-state, and Neal, I know I've heard it from you, but you also hear it from those counties that surround Mississippi. Like if you go to Dallas County, Alabama, which is Selma, and right around Demopolis. I have a cousin who lives there. She's graduating high school, being recruited heavily by Mississippi State. She's just across the state line. So they're very direct. They stick to the plan. They know who they are. And he's a strong leader, believes in athletics, knows what he's doing. State's really, really fortunate to have him.
Yeah, they do a great job. I've said this for a while, and I'm almost hesitant to do it because sometimes people want to push back a little, and I understand that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to ever make it about my kid because my kid kind of wants to leave the state just because that's just the kind of kid she is.
Yeah, it's understandable.
But there was a difference in the way that the two schools recruited her. And she didn't send her stuff to either one of them, and so it wasn't because, well, you sent something here and you didn't send something there.
Yeah.
State did a really good job recruiting her. And she applied there finally, but, she kind of made up her mind pretty quick where she was going, and she's one of those kids that as soon as in her mind it was done, it's like it's over.
Yeah.
Because the other day, it was funny, Chase knows this story. At one point in the process, she had said, hey, I'm interested in journalism.
Ooh.
And I said, well, no, you're not. And she said, well, I kind of am. And I said, well, look, if you're interested in journalism, you're going to go to Missouri. We're going to go to Missouri, and you're going to go look at it, and you're going to like it. And if that's what you're going to do, then... And then she kind of got away from that, and she got into some other stuff. And the other day, she came back, and she said, kind of thinking about, journalism or government or whatever. And I said, look, if you're doing journalism, we're going to go look at Missouri, and we're going to go like next weekend. And it's, well, but I've made up my mind. And I said, no, you're not going to make a short-sighted decision like that. And anyway, long story short is, we kept getting all this stuff from state, handwritten notes and all of that stuff. It was really impressive. Yeah. And at one point, Laura and I, my wife, we kind of looked at each other and said, do we need to make her go look at it? Because one of her very best friends is from Tupelo. They met at camp years ago, and they've been buddies. And now Olivia comes over to the house, and Campbell goes to see her, and all this, whatever. They're girls. And Olivia's a freshman at State. And so, anyway, it's just been kind of funny to watch the process. And when you talk to people about it, because they always see you, and you can relate to this, and Chase can too, they see you as just a sports writer.
Yeah.
And they don't, people, they hear our podcast, and they know there's a lot more to our lives than our job, but that's the front door to our lives, it's what we do. And they don't realize, like my kids have no idea what I do. They don't understand it. We were driving. In fact, it's funny. We were driving to Auburn for a visit, and we listened to one of my podcasts with Jay Tate and Gabe DeArmond, and it was a ridiculous podcast where we talked about God only knows what. And at one point, about 30 minutes in, she goes, "You get paid for this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I get paid for this.
Yeah,
hey, you're going to go to college off some of this money." And she just was baffled. And I take a step back and think, "Yeah, I kind of get it." But no, I mean, I think to Chase's point, it's interesting as Ole Miss goes through this chancellor process. There's absolutely no doubt that one of the things that it has to do, and it's not necessarily that it's a competition, although it is that they do have to react to the success that Keenum has had at Mississippi State. They absolutely do, and there probably are people there that are saying no, that's not the case, but that's delusional. They absolutely do.
Well, and what I also, this is outsider kind of looking in. We come here. My wife went to school here, so we make trips from time to time. But I also think, like I'm driving in today, you hear people talk about the beauty of the campus and everything, and it is, but what I think is, not only strong leadership and all those things, but you need someone who has this drive to really approach the selling of the university and the experience and coming here and not take the approach of, well, if they come here, they're going to like it. Or it'll sell itself. It's like, if Jim McElwain goes to Florida and takes the approach, well, this place just kind of sells itself. Well, it ain't going to, because guess what? They're working hard at Georgia. And nobody's going to outwork Alabama's recruiting staff. And that stuff plays. And so what I think is the next guy here, whoever it is, if they really want to make that hopscotch, it's, they got to take the approach of, yes, you have a great product to sell. You better go sell it. Don't take the approach of, we're going to sit here, have a good time, and it's going to sell itself. That won't work.
It's one of the reasons Alabama football has been as successful as it's been.
Yeah.
Saban's been there, 11 years? They don't rest on their laurels.
No.
They
outwork everybody.
How many kids do you talk to? We don't talk to them anymore. Thank God for Russell Johnson. Appreciate you so much. But when you did,
it covers recruiting for you.
I got it.
When you did talk to kids, you would hear over and over these high school kids that were sophomores or whatever that their first offer, and I know it wasn't a real offer, but their first offer was from Alabama. And the more you get to talk to people, like Tyler Siskey's a big part of the Ole Miss program now, and he came from Alabama, and he'll tell you so much of Saban's success is grassroots. Here's a guy that every single day, this guy that's won, 6 national championships, he takes home 20 films, 20 tapes, whatever.
Recruits.
Yeah, of recruits.
Wow.
Goes on vacation and takes recruits' film, and they send him to him. Now, look, is that obsessive? Yeah, sure. Yeah. But that's what they do. And the point is that so much of what they do is that they get ahead in the evaluation process. They get ahead in the offering process. And you remember this from being a kid. When you're a kid, that school that gets into the lead,
yeah, it means a lot.
They're hard to beat.
It really does.
And Alabama gets ahead on so many of these kids. And as it pertains to academic recruiting, why anybody thinks it's any different is beyond me. Right. Those are just kids who happen to run fast, and they're big, or they're really strong, or some combination thereof. But they're just as mature or less so than the kid that is really good at engineering. Yeah. But there's still a 17-year-old goofy kid who's easily influenced. And if you don't get out in front, you're playing catch-up.
Well, and the thing that goes without saying, too, is how the athletics and success of your teams and exposure and then the experience at the athletics events, how that plays into it. Because, you know what, I'm drawing a blank now on who actually ran the numbers for Alabama football, but it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Somebody at AL.com did a big thing of economic impact in Tuscaloosa and the state of Alabama, but also the numbers on their enrollment since they began to have the football success. And it's just like, it's the gasoline on the fire.
Well, I've always told this story. So Ole Miss played at TCU in baseball in like 2011 or something like that, and it was right after Andy Dalton had carried TCU to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
And Jim Schlossnagle, the TCU head coach, goes, we take 2,000 kids every year no matter what. That's TCU's enrollment. That's what we do. It was 2,000 out of like 5,000 prior to Dalton. Well, all of a sudden it was 2,000 out of 15,000. Yeah. So your academic level raises up, and it's so dependent on sports that it does this crazy thing. And he was explaining why, we're moving tiers all of a sudden because of what's happening.
Andy Dalton does have that impact on people.
It does.
He
really.
does. He really
Neil
does.
is in love with Andy Dalton. He loves him some Andy Dalton. So we will take a break here in the show to tell you about the Blue Delta trivia question for the night, a $200 gift certificate to Blue Delta for the first person with the answer. If anybody in here has it, they could write it on a napkin, bring it up here. I'm gonna throw a bone to Mr. Wyatt for the trivia question tonight.
Oh yeah,
yeah. During his 4 years of eligibility at Mississippi State,
you didn't look at my stats, did you?
No, I looked at scores, not stats. Your stats wasn't very good, but okay. I looked at the scores. The cumulative score between Ole Miss and Mississippi State during your 4 years. The trivia question for tonight, the 4 years added up. So that's the trivia question for tonight. A $200 gift certificate to Blue Delta Jeans for the first person to answer that one. Yeah, every week, $200 gift certificate.
I wish
to
I
Blue
could answer.
You don't know the answer, though.
See, you already want your second pair.
I do.
You're already working on it. I told you.
These things are
one of those years, though, I am curious about this because we always talk to Stuart Patridge, Corey Peterson, whatever. From the state angle, what was the 97 game like there at the end? I mean, I hate to start there with you, but I'm just kind of curious, because for Ole Miss, it was down to the tipping point of the bowl games in a row, and it gets them into the Marshall game in the Motor City Bowl. From the state angle, though, they make the drive. You've got the missed kick with the hurt kicker and everything. What's going on from the state point of view during the end of that game?
Yeah, it's a long time ago, so it's memory fades.
21 years.
21 years, man. That is so ridiculous. But I do remember the whole context of the whole thing, and that was you've got a chance to play yourself into a bowl game potentially. Which, if you think about it, we had an 11-game season, not 12, and we were a 7-win team. We had won in Auburn, we won in Alabama that year. I'm trying to think of some of the other games. We beat Kentucky that year. But you're sitting there with 7 wins out of 11, but you're not going to a bowl game. Well, there were only 16 postseason bowl games in 1997. Think about that. He's got the answer.
That was the correct answer, by the way. We already have it that quickly.
Really?
Yeah, that's right.
There you go. But
that was fast.
And so you just it was so limited. And frankly, look, let's be honest. If you went to one of the 16 bowl games, you really accomplished something to be one of 16 teams still playing, or one of 32. But I remember that, and also we had the fight before the game. which to me, again, looking back on it, really threw everything out of whack.
Did you jump into the fight, or were you off to the side?
No,
Where you
my
at?
perspective on it. My perspective on the fight was
you weren't over there next to Shivers. You were in the whole
no. He was on the home sideline because he was a recruit. My girlfriend at the time, who was actually my first wife, wound up being my first wife. She was a recruiter for us. She was on the recruiting staff, and she was with Wes when he got hit in the nose by a helmet.
Really?
But that was on the other side. We were on the visiting sideline, which we had come out of the locker room, which was in the south end now.
Yeah.
And we're huddled up over there. This big group of offensive skill people, right? Because only like specialists and a few linemen had been on the field. So we're over there, and and basically our perspective was one guy in front of us. I don't remember who it was, an Ole Miss player, pushing and shoving with one of our guys. That's all I could really see.
So you're blaming it on the Ole Miss players?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
we were on their sideline.
All right.
But all I could see was there's this big group of us, about 20 of us, with our backs to the east side, facing the west, and one guy is pushing and shoving with one of our guys. So we're all going, hey, y'all, break it up, break it up, break it up. Well, then all of a sudden, out of your peripheral vision, you see there's like 20 other people doing the same thing across the field. And it happens so fast that when we realize that's happening, we just kind of break up, and here we go out across the field. And before most of us had even taken 15 steps off of that visiting sideline, it was over. It was one of those things. And then you see the
So you would have gotten to Deuce McAllister if you would have had a little more time. Is that what you're trying to say?
I probably would have avoided him, most likely, if I'm being honest.
A smart quarterback.
If a buddy needed help, I would have gone up and say, hey, man, y'all cut it out. You know what I'm saying? But, yeah, so we step on the field, and then we see the film, and you can see the video later to realize that it actually started back on the other end, kind of on the home side, and that's where all the fray was. And we had this one young, I think he was a freshman at the time, quarterback they had signed out of Georgia named Robbie Stillwell. Robbie's a great athlete. He actually returned kicks for us some. But he was a fighter. But he was only like 6 feet tall and about 190 pounds. And he's over there getting he ganged up on by about 4 or 5, Ole Miss players, and they just beat him to a pulp in this fight. We felt so bad for him. But you got pads on, so it didn't really hurt anyone. And I remember after it was all over, kind of laughing with Robbie in the locker room. We were kind of, before the game started, thinking, how did you wind up the one guy that gets teamed up on, and you're the littlest guy on the field, So that's my memory of that. But then the game itself was one where, we had been very much an up and down offense all year long. A lot like this year's state team, in fact. Like we'd have games where we would just explode and, throw for 250 and run for a bunch of yards. We had J.J. Johnson. And then we'd have other games we were just in a shell, and I turned the ball over a lot that year. And in that game, we just couldn't quite get going. We couldn't quite get the run game going. Pass game was, we were very conservative in what we tried. We didn't throw the ball down the field. And so you had the close game, and Corey caught the 2-point conversion at the end to beat us. And then you stay home, but that was it. We knew going in, if you lose, you
had to win.
Yeah, you had to win to keep playing. And I'll be honest with you, there was talk, among some of our team members that, hey, man, you win this game, what are we going to play in? Some obscure bowl that nobody even watches? And that was the attitude of some of your guys. But, you go and you play to win the game, or try to anyway.
This podcast is also brought to you by Dead Soxy. The limited edition Rebel colored socks are available. There's a limited quantity. There's only 100 of each style available. If you've been on the fence, this is a great place to start with the brand. These have an introductory price point at only $20, but that's before the Rebel Grove discount. After the discount, it's only $15 per pair. This is the exact sock that Dead Soxy makes for their custom clients. So if you're interested in the custom socks, try a pair of the Rebel socks to experience the difference a quality sock makes. Powder blue colored socks can be a challenge to find. They've got the styles and colors to appease any Ole Miss fan, so make sure that you get a hold of these. These make a perfect gift for the holidays, your stocking stuffer solution. It has arrived. Go to deadsoxy.com/rebels. That's DEADSOXY /rebels. Or find them on the bottom of the page under the styles heading. Enter the promo code Rebel Grove at checkout, and you'll get 25% off your order. Chase is going to have these at the watch party on Friday in Nashville, so check them out. Maybe you'll win a pair, and then go to the site, deadsoxy.com/rebels. Podcast is also brought to you by Pinnacle Trust. Pinnacle Trust based in Madison, Mississippi, but it represents clients in 24 states and has advisors in 3 states. Founded in 1997, Pinnacle Trust provides detailed, specialized investment management, financial planning, retirement planning for individuals and businesses, and much more. At Pinnacle Trust, investing is treated like a commodity, and decisions are made using objective information and research, not emotions. Regardless of your level of wealth, Pinnacle Trust will sit down with you, listen to your goals, study your expenses, and put forth a comprehensive, detailed financial and retirement plan. It's not what cookie-cutter financial planners do. They ask you a handful of questions and stick you in a box. Pinnacle Trust finds out what your goals are, your dreams are, your retirement plans. Do you plan to travel? Do you just plan to stay home? What do you plan to do? And then they make a plan, taking your income, your expenses in mind, and give you the gift of peace, the gift of knowing that you can retire and live the way you want to live after you finish work. So get in touch with them, pintrust.com, P-I-N-N trust.com. Mention you heard about Pinnacle Trust on the podcast. You'll get 10% off your first year's fee. Hey, join the West in Jackson for their inaugural event. It's the Festival of Trees. It's a community-wide event. The West in Jackson has partnered with Eventful, Visit Jackson, Friends of Children's Hospital, and many others to create a one-of-a-kind, all-month-long holiday event comprised of elaborately decorated Christmas trees lining the West in Jackson halls, a holiday charity gala, sugar plum fairy teas, and brunch with Santa. This annual event is sure to delight kids of all ages and warm the Christmas spirit in all who attend. Purchase your tickets today at jacksonfestivaloftrees.com.
The next year, you win the SEC West, beat Ole Miss 28-6, and in Oxford, Tuberville's last game, all that stuff going on. Ramiro breaks his collarbone, though, the week before Georgia. You probably had to wake up on that Sunday morning and see backup quarterback and go, hey, this feels pretty good headed to Oxford this week.
Yes. And we were, we had such a great defense.
You're really good. I mean, yeah.
Well, we had, a senior J.J. Johnson at running back who, look, people don't remember. I swear to you, his thighs as big around as a seat on that old chair over there. He was just huge. Maybe the toughest individual I've ever been around. The stories about him, are legendary. If we'd had an SEC network back then, they'd have done one of these documentaries on him. I'm going to tell you a true story, and you're going to know where this is. JJ, rough home life as a kid, growing up. He's in Mobile. And one of his parents kind of relocated to Dothan, Northview, Dothan.
Yeah.
So he leaves Mobile, goes to Northview, Dothan for 1 year, played football in high school 1 year. At some point, the parent he was staying with, falling out with their partner and all this, and he's done with it. J.J. Johnson, at 17 years old, gets on a bicycle, leaves Dothan, and goes back to Mobile, Alabama.
On a bike?
On a bicycle.
Wow.
The whole way from, I'm talking, how many miles are we talking about? 120?
I can ask Siri.
Yeah, ask Siri.
Siri, how far is it from Mobile to Dothan, Alabama?
Dothan is about 196 miles from Mobile.
196.
196.
Yes. So it takes him,
It's the tour to Alabama.
You're talking about 2 days on a bicycle. It's a true story. The kid, he's playing at East Mississippi Community College, right? Our coaches at Mississippi State are going there to recruit him. They've got kind of like a pro day sort of thing. It's pouring down rain. JJ takes his shoes off, runs a 4.40 barefoot on their field at Scuba. We sign him. Anyway, toughest individual. So I've chased a rabbit here for you. Great defense that year. Had JJ go into that game. We were really confident we were going to win the game. But I will tell you this. During the game, of course it's here at Vaught Hemingway, during the game, Deuce is running the ball up and down the field on us. Nobody else had done that to us that year, our defense. It was a little bit, it punches you because you're not used to seeing this. Man, they're getting 5 yards a carry on our defense. And we got multiple NFLers on our defensive front. They're just running the ball. And the first drive they do it, they get it right on down in the red zone with this walk-on quarterback, David Morris, and threw the ball like 3 times once they got it inside the 15. Incomplete, field goal.
With usually one receiver in route. They didn't really give him a lot of options. It was just sort of throw it up here when they did it.
On our sideline, we comment about it. We're like, hey, appreciate that. And no joke, it happens again, like the second drive of the game. They get it right on down there. At some point, they try to trick play in there also, but they run the ball down the field and then get inside the red zone and try to throw the ball. And we're sitting on our sideline going, hey, do that all night. We appreciate that because we felt like if they had continued to run the ball in the red zone, they would have scored. And so we felt like that was a gift. The other thing that happened that night that I remember was at the beginning of the game. I was mentioning to you before, one of my teammates, Rob Morgan, he and I are brothers-in-law now. We were both quarterbacks in the same class. Well, Rob had 2 brothers. His middle brother, Josh Morgan, was a great safety for us. He's now the head coach at Warren Central. And the youngest was Brett Morgan. Brett played at State. He's now coaching at West Point. At the time, though, Brett was in like the 6th, 7th grade in 98. So it's pregame, getting ready for kickoff. We hold our helmets up. The teams are lined up. And I look down, and 6th grade Brett Morgan is standing next to me on the sideline. And I said, Brett, what are you doing down here, man? How'd you get down here? He goes, oh, man, I just jumped the fence. So his 2 brothers are out here on the, dressed out. Little Brett's over there. He just jumped the fence at the Vaught Hemingway and just comes down on the sideline with us. I look over there at one point in the game. Our kicker was warming up into the net, and Brett's over there handing him the football. He's just kind of decided he's going to be the ball boy that night. And so he kind of got a front row view.
Kind of move into the present a little bit. Ole Miss and State next Thanksgiving, obviously, both have one game remaining this week. Prior to that, with State, first year of Joe Moorhead, post Dan Mullen and everything. Just kind of curious about this. I think Neil was going to ask anyway. Are you expecting this thing to become a little tamer between the teams? I mean, Hugh Freeze gone, Dan Mullen gone, the NCAA situation starting to work itself out and be finalized finally, because whether or not we consider it toxic or not, or whatever term you want to use, it does appear that both sides are somewhat tempering things as we move forward.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's a lot of reasons for it. From my perspective, one reason is, both teams, I think both sides now are starting to have their own, personal issues to deal with. Does that make sense? Now, I know you've gotten the relief on some of the recruiting stuff from the NCAA, but if you're Ole Miss, you're looking at some guys like A.J. Brown going to the NFL, and then Metcalf's going to be going. You're like, what about next year? And this, so there's a little more focusing on us. And I would tell you on the State side of it too. Now we've got our own question marks in terms of the offense because it's been so hit or miss this year, and Moorhead was an offensive coach, and you're starting to look ahead to next year and go, well, look, okay, so Sweat's going to be gone, and Simmons is going to be gone in that defense. Fitz is graduated, So I think in some ways both fan bases are starting to look inwardly as opposed to looking across the line as it used to be. And the success isn't there, too. I think one thing that amped it up those years, certainly, is both teams were really good. Both teams in the national headlines and not only recruiting but winning games and ranked and all that. So that's not there. That kind of, pulls it back down to earth a little bit. And I think also, too, there is an element of after last year's game, for everything that was, the plays that were made in the game, a lot of people, I felt this way, but I think a lot of people on both fan bases after last year's game were like, you know what? I'm so sick and tired of the gnashing of teeth and the clawing at each other. At last year's Egg Bowl, every single play, players jawing at each other and pushing and shoving, and here comes the referee stepping in there. And, then there's a no-nothing play again. Nobody makes any yards. And, okay, look, they're jawing at each other again. It was just like, I don't know, it was too much, almost.
Metcalf did the thing in the end zone, and guys were going at each other. And, I was surprised, frankly, that last year's game stayed as, quote, under control as it did. Yeah. It felt to me like a tinderbox the whole time.
It was ready to tip at any point. And I think you're right. And maybe people felt that. But again, that was 60 minutes of jawing. Two teams extracurricular jawing after every play. And I think that was kind of the point where a lot of people walked away from that game on both sides and said, you know what, I'm sick of that crap. And I think that, too, this year, it's just going to be a game where it doesn't have so much riding on it in any really shape, form, or fashion. A win or a loss in this year's game is not going to, springboard one team in recruiting and flatten the other. And I think everybody kind of realizes that.
If Moorhead had been recruiting it, look, Fitzgerald's had a really good career. Moorhead probably would not recruit that type of quarterback, right?
I don't think so. I was sitting in my car right before I got out to walk up here watching those the senior highlights of Garrett Schrader, the kid that's committed to North Carolina. He's like 6'6", and he's a thrower. I mean, he can really run, and he runs a lot, but he can really throw the ball. And, truthfully, he's probably already a better thrower than Fitz is at this point in his career. He's probably got more pass attempts under his belt as a senior in high school than Fitz does right now as a senior in college. That tells you a little bit about what Joe's probably looking for. This year, offensively for State, it has been wild. The ups and the downs. Somebody posted it might have been Russo or somebody yesterday on Twitter, the statistical analysis of State more so than anybody in the – State has the biggest disparity of anybody in the country in FBS of the offensive yards per play in games they won versus offensive yards per play in games they lost. So, that's what I've been saying all year is, we've seen this offensive explosion against Auburn. They were super multi-dimensional and threw it great, ran it great against A&M. Then you look at the games they lost to Kentucky on the road. They barely had 200 yards of offense. They were just non-competitive.
They looked so one-dimensional in those games.
Right, and had, I think, 16 penalties in that game. Against Florida, right? Against Florida. Could not throw it. Barely 200 yards.
Yeah.
Didn't get to 200 yards of offense against Alabama. So it's been when they won, the numbers are way out there. 500 yards, and Fitz throws for 4 touchdowns in the first half. But then when you lose, it's nothing.
Yeah,
and
they've scored 16 total points in the 4 games they've lost in the SEC this year.
Yeah.
Averaging 4 points a game.
Well, and like you say, you could add up the offensive yardage total in those 4 losses, and you're probably not quite to 600 yards in those 4 losses. So it's been kind of hard to figure out, and I think certainly one of the contributing factors is, there are times when Fitz is confused. That's just all there is to it. He and receivers, you got receivers in this offense running stuff where they're reading it on the fly as well. So it's not like, Chase, you go line up on the numbers, run a 12-yard curl. Okay? If they run bump man coverage, run a go. That's not what you're doing. There are 10 different variations based on what kind of coverage and alignment you get, and as a receiver, you got to read it after I snap the ball. So there's confusion. When it works, it looks great. When it doesn't, it's been really bad.
Here's a funny aside as we tape this on a Thursday night. The finalists for the Johnny Unitas Award out today. Will Greer, former Florida quarterback. Shea Patterson, former Ole Miss quarterback. Gardner Minshew, former Brandon High School quarterback.
Wow.
Mackenzie Milton at UCF, who's a great story, and then Drew Lock at Missouri. It could have been, and maybe should have been, a banner year for SEC quarterbacks if those guys had all stuck around.
Yeah, or been recruited in Gardner's case.
Yeah, in Gardner's case, for sure.
You see what Mike Leach said this week about if the Pac-12 coaches were to have a big fight, Royal Rumble? They baited him into the question in the press conference. And so he answers it all, and he points out that Kyle Whittingham at Utah, and then he says nobody would want to mess with Mario Cristobal and all this. And then they tried to bait him one more time. They go, Coach, which coach would you least fear? He goes, I'm not answering that.
Yeah.
We're done. Anyway.
That's what we always talk about. I'd love to see Leach at an SEC program because the media is so different in the southeastern part of SEC schools that there are some media that I think would just combust having to listen to Leach.
Because he'd lose a game and then go on a 25-minute rant about Halloween candy and it would drive them
and raccoons.
Yeah.
The evils of candy corn.
So you don't think that Leach would
Oh, I would love it.
I would love it too, but I'm saying, do you think he would last or even be really considered at an SEC school? I mean, I thought he was considered at Tennessee.
He basically had the Tennessee job until the AD got fired.
That would have been perfect.
Yeah, that would. But the Tennessee fan base is nuts. Yeah. And mixed in, like, can you imagine the Tennessee fan base the Monday after Tennessee loses to Mississippi State 31-20, and it's Halloween, and someone says, "What's your favorite Halloween candy?" And he goes into these 6-minute deals where he compares the merits of Snickers versus Milky Way. I just think a lot of Tennessee fans would not find that as amusing as we do.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Just kind of curious here. So this big's been, as we said, go back to the Ole Miss State rivalry for a second. Just kind of curious. How much of it, and you know the fan base much better than we do, at Mississippi State, and I mean, Ole Miss has played their part in it too. It's not all one side or another by any means. How much of it was a fan base expectation where some of this has become almost professional wrestling caricatures, characters playing out roles maybe in some of this from a media standpoint versus all the way just, hey, this is actually how we feel and we're pushing all these narratives?
So you're asking, rephrase that for me and tell me.
Neil, go ahead.
Some of the people, and this happens on the Ole Miss beat too, some of the people on the Mississippi State beat, and again, it happens on the Ole Miss beat too. I could name names, but I won't because I've already alienated everybody. They do this deal where it's my theory, and I told Chase this earlier today, that it's a caricature. Yeah. It's not really how they feel. I have some evidence on this, but I would have to violate a confidence, and I don't want to do that. That they write or tweet or whatever a certain way because they think that will appeal more to the fan base as opposed to what they actually think about their job or the teams that they cover or the way that they interact.
The podcast is also brought to you in part by John Edwards of Regency Travel Incorporated in Memphis. If you've been thinking about that golf trip with the guys that you'll never forget, or maybe that anniversary trip that she'll never forget, whether you've dreamed of playing St. Andrews or sitting at a cafe in Paris, talk to John Edwards before you try to do it yourself. Another thing you can add is you can start calling John, look into those cruises, those resorts in Florida and the Caribbean. Maybe you're looking into this the summer coming up, tee times at golf courses in Scotland and Ireland. Those are starting to fill up, becoming less available. So get in touch with John. He's part of Virtuoso. It's a worldwide network of travel partners that allows John to supply his clients with added values and unique benefits that are simply not available to other travelers. John traveled the globe for 37 years before getting into the travel business, so he knows the extra attention that's needed to make a special trip one that creates a lifetime of memories. So if you're thinking about going with the boys to Pebble Beach or taking her to Napa for the vacation of her dreams, call John, give him some parameters and a budget, and let him give you some options. And know this, you don't have to live in or near Memphis to take advantage of his services. It's 901-494-3387 or send him an email, jedwards@regencytravel.net. First-time clients can save $50 off their first booked trip just by telling John you heard about Regency Travel on the podcast. And this podcast is brought to you by Oxford University Bank. OUB is locally owned and operated right here in Oxford. When you deposit money at OUB, that money and the vast majority of the bank's profits go right back into the Oxford community. OUB gives you the comfort of home, all the benefits the big mega banks provide, all the technology and products you can want, all with the personal touch. When you call OUB, you speak directly with a live person. There's no 10 buttons to push, no 5-minute wait. What there is Kasasa. It's the absolute best checking account. And with Kasasa, OUB will pay customers 2.5% interest on their balances up to $50,000. And with Kasasa, ATM fees nationwide are refunded. OUB also offers online bill pay and mobile check deposit using its online app. To learn more about OUB, check out Live Oxford, bankoxford.com, or call 662-234-6668. OUB is FDIC insured. And we're brought to you by Strategic Partners and Media. SPM is a full-service advertising agency that works with businesses of all types, big or small, Fortune 500 companies to startups. SPM can help your advertising needs for TV, radio, print, and every facet of social and digital media. Look, here's why SPM's really good and different than other ad firms. They handle everything in-house. They don't sub their work out. The writing, the production, the editing is done solely by their staff and crafted uniquely for their clients. Lastly, an Ole Miss grad and a Mississippian is a partner in the firm, so give them a call and see how great they are. It's Austin at strategicpartnersmedia.com. Again, Austin at strategicpartnersmedia.com.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say sure. I kind of feel like, depending on what type of media you're in and wherever you go, there's this ultra, there's two things at play. And I think what you're touching on is accurate. There's two things at play. One is there's this ultra competition for attention. Like that's what everybody wants. We're all trying to get somebody's attention and pull them into our sponsors. But then there's some ego involved with it. That could be, maybe the number of listens on a podcast or clicks on a story or breaking a story. But I would tell you, too, I think a lot of times, there's an element of nobody used to walk up and say to you, hey, how you doing? I read your thing, or I liked what you tweeted, or you know what I mean? You were just, there was a level of popularity you had never experienced. And then all of a sudden you experience it, and you're like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And you like that, So I think you get that some, certainly in media. But one thing I do like about 2018 is nobody can run and hide, the way they used to. There aren't any more, writers with surnames anymore. Or not surnames, it's not the right word, but with screen names that, you're kind of hiding behind some, alter ego that's a writer. But I think to answer your question, State's got that in its beat. There ain't no doubt about it. I mean, I think everybody does to a certain degree, but yeah, you see that, sure.
I mean, on both sides of the beat, I see people say things like, well, I can't go to Oxford, something will happen to me, or I can't go to Starkville, something will happen. It's like, nothing's going to happen to you. I mean, to me, that's just all part of this act that I never can figure out whether they truly believe that or, I mean, there's not going to be the Anchorman brawl in the press box.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, it's not going to happen.
I mean, Parham here is going to be worried about Saints Falcons. I mean,
huge game.
Yeah, I'm dying already. I'm struggling.
The Saints are going to absolutely murder them.
What's happened is I've dominated picks this year. We pick SEC games every year, and I've been very good. I'm 30 games over 500 or something against the spread so far this year. And Neal has started putting in Saints games because he knows I'll pick against them. Because it's an emotional hedge. It's an emotional hedge where I either get a win or I get a win. So
for example, I
picked the Bengals to win 91-3 on Sunday against the Saints.
This is a free pickup for me, I mean,
he just called it emotional hedging.
Yes,
that is fantastic, Chase.
So I get a win either way.
Let me just go ahead and make you a guarantee. You want it? The Saints are going to absolutely run the Falcons out of there.
You think so? I'm still broken from last January, Matt. I'm still broken. So I
can imagine. I can't. Well, I can only imagine being a diehard fan of that team and watching that happen. That was brutal.
I've had a lot of bad losses. That was number one.
All right, so question. So what you were alluding to on the MSUB, you specifically talking about Steve?
No, I actually was not talking about Steve.
Okay,
his example was not Steve.
Yeah, my example's not Steve. It's again, I don't really want to call the guy out because I kind of understand his mindset. No, with Steve, I'll give him credit. It's pretty out front.
Yeah.
It's more subtle with other people.
I'm sure. I would tell you that, again, when you run into that, whether it's at Mississippi State, and in that case, maybe it is, whether it's anywhere else, Neal, you've been around this long enough. There are people in media who sometimes they get to thinking that they are the story or that they're part of it. There's a blurring of the line of why in the world would they let you in a press box anyway? The only reason we get to go up there is because there's something happening in front of us that actually matters, okay? What I say about it doesn't matter unless I accurately portray what happened to the people listening to me or to the people reading me. It's the only reason in any way I matter in regards to this game. And that's one of the big sticking points I have with television. And, I'm old enough to get off my lawn sort of thing. But look, you know, how hard is it nowadays to watch a game on television if really all you're wanting to see is the game? All right, you have to mute it. Because half of what you're getting from announcers on TV games is, look at what our sideline guy's wearing. Hey, what'd you eat for supper? It's Todd Black that started all that crap with, around the town where we got 5 minutes of him over there chewing on a hamburger, and I'm waiting. I want to see the kickoff or show me the replay of an important. The only reason I'm watching a game on TV is for the ball in the air. And if it ain't about the ball in the air, cut it out. But so what happens is so many of these TV guys start to believe that they are a part of it, that they are a part of the attraction, that people are tuning in, sure, for the game, but we're also tuning in for his colorful tie. And the same's true with a writer or it could be a radio guy. You have those around the conference, radio guys who
for sure.
The ego gets so swollen, and all in the world your job is to make sure the people listening who can't see it can figure out and picture what just happened. That's your only role. So it's ego-driven, and that happens when there's never been any level of popularity or fame in their life before, period. And they experience for the first time, some random person goes, hey, I know who you are. You did such and such on Twitter or on whatever. And all of a sudden they start to thinking, oh, this is really cool. I like this. And it gets out of control.
Yeah, we see that a lot. We get the kind of the pushback of, I know you guys are more engaged, emotionally involved than, and you're like, no, man. I tell him all the time, we talk about it. Thanksgiving, and unfortunately it's on Thanksgiving because I wish it was on Saturday. I don't like the Thursday night.
Yeah,
anyway. I'm going to go to the game an hour before the game, an hour and a half before the game. The game's going to end.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get out of there 2 hours and 15 minutes after it's over, regardless of the outcome. And I'm not playing.
Right.
No one's going to call me and say, hey, what do you think we ought to do here on third down?
Right. Neil, you're exactly right about that. You have so many fans as well, but media too, that line gets blurred of that emotional involvement. In some ways, I guess it's probably natural. If you cover a team long enough or something, you start to have that emotional deal. But there should always be a return to center where you go, hey, look, man, even as a fan, I could have bought great seats on the 50-yard line, and I can yell as loud as I want to, but I basically have no effect on this outcome. It's like when people, this week there's been a lot of back and forth with Alabama fans and me on my Twitter feed because all I've said is the officiating in the SEC week after week is horrible. We're the best at everything. That was my point this week. We're the best at everything. The best people, the best commissioner, the best teams, the best coaches, the best athletes, the best network, the most money. Yet every year the worst officiating in the country in football, men's basketball, and women's basketball officiating in this conference is laughable. And so why can't we be the best? That's my point. Well, Alabama fans have been taking that as me still whining about the football game. And then they tweet me and they use the word we. And I'm thinking, okay, I understand, what you're saying, but what do you mean we? In other words, those folks have nothing to do with any outcome of any football game. But sometimes media as well, you start to, it's we this and we that. And, you have to return to center and realize, man, you show up, you cover the game. What you write, what you think, what you tweet, there's no effect on what happens on that field.
Do you think there is any voluntary or involuntary bias toward any teams in the SEC from an officiating standpoint?
No, I don't. And here's why. I think the officiating arm of the conference, and in football too, is dysfunctional. Yeah. From the evaluation to teaching to training to hiring to assignment process, I think it is dysfunctional. I can't call them dysfunctional and then give them the credit to say they're smart enough to pull off a conspiracy.
Because that's contradictory.
So organized to then go, we're doing
I don't
whatever.
think it's nearly that organized enough. And the example we're looking at this week, it goes back to last year's State versus Alabama game. Now, this is a specific one. And again, if you listen through Crimson Glass or through
last year's or last week's?
Last year and last week's.
Okay.
There's a common thread in that popped up that we realized, wait a minute. This ain't right. 4 or 5 years ago, Steve Shaw did an interview with AL.com, and his quote was, they go to great lengths to make sure that there's nobody on an officiating crew that has some conflict of interest in the school that they're officiating. In other words, if you played there, Brad Freeman from Oxford, great guy, one of the best officials we've ever had. When he was in the SEC, before he went to the NFL, he could never officiate a state game. His dad could never officiate a state game, played there.
Couldn't do an Ole Miss game either.
Couldn't do an Ole Miss game.
Yeah, because he would come to Ole Miss and do practices.
Right, but couldn't do the games for those reasons. Because of the rivalry thing, right? So we look up and
which is such an insult to Brad to think that he would put his integrity aside and say, no, I'm far more concerned about the outcome of this game between 170 kids that I don't know, and I'll give my career away for it.
Which he's not going to do. He's not going to do that. But by removing him, you protect him, right? And you show as a governing body, umbrella, that you're smart enough to go, we're going to protect him, we're going to remove the idea of some conspiracy, and we're going to do it proactively ahead of time. So here's the situation you have. In the game on Saturday and in the Alabama State game last year, there's a guy on the officiating crew whose last name is Skelton. His name's Rob Skelton.
The insurance guy.
Well, I don't know if he's the insurance guy, but
Okay.
I think he's a banker in Alabama.
Okay.
But Rob is the son of Bullet Bob Skelton, a quarterback for the University of Alabama, played for Bear Bryant. His granddad graduated there. Rob's family box seats at Alabama games every week in Tuscaloosa. And he works in Alabama. And he's officiating. Okay, Rob didn't go to the University of Alabama. He went to Jacksonville State. But somebody brought up a great point. What are the chances that at some point in Rob Skelton's life, with his dad who was a quarterback for Bear Bryant, his family are all fans and buying tickets, that he at some point in his life has uttered the words, "Roll Tide"? The chances are really, really up there.
I like the chances, yeah.
All right, so he is refereeing multiple games that Alabama plays in. All right, and so if you work the back channels, they'll tell you, well, it's one of those things where he's grandfathered into officiating crews because he was here before Steve Shaw took over as, head of officials. Okay, well, let me tell you something. There's an example of why I use the word dysfunction. If it happened one time, that's enough for somebody to go, hey, wait a minute. Just to protect Rob, he's a great official. He ain't going to pull a stunt.
Yeah, send him to the Kentucky-Tennessee game.
You got to make sure he's not doing Bama games, man. Well, not only is it once or twice, it's like 10 games in the last couple of years or 3 years that he's done Alabama games. It's just another example of if you're the conference and you don't want fans to find that stuff out and go down the conspiracy path, well, dadgum, do your part. Figure that out. Get him off those games.
Yeah, no doubt, and we will close it up there for the night and the semester. Appreciate Matt joining us today. Appreciate Funkies. They're open at 1 o'clock on Thanksgiving Day. If you're wanting to pregame before Ole Miss and Mississippi State, they've got the Phil Mickelson-Tiger Woods match on the weekend as well. You can come in and watch that one, and we also appreciate Blue Delta Jeans throughout the year coming in for giving us those gift certificates. They got the corduroy available if anybody wants to jump into the corduroy now. And much more. So, again, this will be available.
Thanksgiving pizza? Is that right? Thanksgiving pizza?
Thanksgiving pizza they're working on. That's a possibility. So, that and
put turkey on it?
That and more.
It's a mashed potato base.
Yeah. Gravy and everything.
Sounds good.
We'll have that available tomorrow everywhere you like to listen to your podcast, up again on this Friday. So, appreciate all you guys. Appreciate Blue Delta. Thanks to Matt for joining. We'll talk to you soon.